A few episodes ago, in episode 306 to be exact, I shared with you my struggle of trying to balance being a homemaker, being a housewife, being a mom of two kids, and also balancing having a business. In a way, it's always felt like I am always kind of stuck doing something that I don't necessarily feel like I signed up for. It could either be being an Uber driver to my kids or having to have meals at the table at 5:30 p.m. I just never saw myself in that role, in that homemaker kind of role. I always saw myself exploring life, exploring the world. And yes, with my kids, taking my kids everywhere. But I never really saw myself in this 1950s mold of a housewife that had to do specific things in specific ways. And today, I'm actually going to be introducing you to Mia Moran, who at some point had this exact same struggle, and she figured out how to completely simplify her life so that she could lead her business and her home life and feel great about both. And that's kind of the place where I want all of us to be. Hi, my name is Coveney, marketing strategist and business coach and podcaster. And this is a Superhumans podcast where I interview the top most successful people that we know out there, and we deconstruct that success. We humanize their success so that you can get all of the lessons, the ideas, and the experiences so that you can also become a superhuman in your own life. Today is going to be all about how to really balance these two things and how to simplify your life, because Mia Moran knows all about it. Now, if you've never heard this podcast before, you might not realize that this is not what my voice normally sounds like. I have been battling this like mega virus for the past week. My husband and I have been in pretty bad shape. And now what lingers is this really low tone voice and this cough that won't go away. So I guess we're all dealing with my sultry voice for this episode. So, anyway, before we start talking to Mia, she's an incredible business owner. She really figures some things out for us. I wanted to share with you what has happened since episode 306. And by the way, if you want to pause and go listen to that episode first, I totally welcome you to, but you don't have to. I'm going to summarize it right here for you. So, in 306, I was going through something in my home life where I'm starting to realize that my identity doesn't have to be tied with being a homemaker or a business owner. I can actually figure out how to balance both. And since then, I kind of figured something out, and I wanted to see if this is something that would actually help you in your journey. I have been calling it gamification of homemaking. So let me tell you the story of how all this came about. So in episode 306, I was really struggling with the fact that my identity seemed to be tied to this homemaker role that I never really wanted, that I really didn't want, but I kept associating it with being a good mother. And I feel like that's something that we can all just stop doing right now, associating how good of a homemaker you are with how good of a mom you are. These two are completely different and separate concepts. And that's what we really uncover in 306. And since then, I have discovered a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to introduce you to somebody. She is an imaginary person, but she is in my head, and she's in my head all the time. This is the part of my psyche. If you've ever done any parts work in therapy, by the way, there's something called, go look it up, internal family systems, IFS. And it's this concept that you can pay a visit to your brain as if it was divided into different roles, as if there were different parts of you that were acting independently. So, in a way, there is a part of you that is a business owner, CEO, type A, she likes getting things done. Then there's another part of you that is the mom, is the one that loves on her kids and wants her kids to be happy and knows and figures out how to teach them and how to raise them right. That's the mom part. Then there's another part that is your homemaker part. This is the part that sometimes gets turned on when you are like in the zone to clean your house, vacuuming, cleaning the shelves, emptying everything out, taking the trash out, like making the perfect home. That part loves that work. Now, it may be that you as a whole don't prefer to live in that part, right? And that was me. I don't prefer to live in like embodying just the one part of me who likes things clean and who likes things tidy. So back in episode 306, I was really struggling with this. And I went to pay a little visit to that part of me to see how she's doing. That part of me that is tasked with making dinners, that is tasked with picking up kids and dropping them off and planning summer camps and cleaning the house. And when I went to visit her, she was wearing a 1950s like homemaker outfit, right? Like total Mrs. Beaver, right? And she's like even wearing curls in her hair, not the actual curl, like after you take the curls off, right? Her hair was curly, but you could tell that she wore those curls. And she's just like sitting on the floor crying in desperate need. Desperation is what I got from her. I decided to actually name her. Her name is Doris. I named her after Doris Day. And I went to visit Doris, and Doris was at a point that she hated her job. She absolutely hated having to put meals on the table, hated having to clean the house, and she was not having a good time. Now, at the time, I'm here thinking, well, Doris, you're not doing your job. You hate your job. So I'm going to take over for a little bit. So me, Ina, the full body Ina, I started to take over a few of Doris's tasks to kind of get them off her plate. I know this sounds like really weird, but it kind of started to work in my head that I needed to give her a little bit of a break. Then my husband and I went into couples therapy, and we started to talk more jointly rather than at each other about each other's struggles, right? My husband and I have shared this in the past. I did an entire episode on finances. My husband is the one that manages our home finances. So he has a lot more visibility to how we're doing and the health of our accounts and everything. And when we went to therapy, we started talking a little bit more openly about our finances and about everything that was going on. And I could tell that it was a little bit of a stress for him. The fact that Doris wasn't putting food at the table at 5:30. It stresses him out because that means that we're eating out a lot more than we should be, and it's spending a lot of money. So once the whole Ina, once I started to have conversations with my husband about our financials, I started to see that this is not just a stress for him. This affects me. This affects our family if we're eating out all the time. So as a whole person, I started to think a little bit more logically. I started to think, it might actually be a good idea to eat in more. And my husband and I just kind of came up with a budget, and it started to feel more like a collaborative effort, right? It started to feel a lot less like my husband is putting me in this 1950s role that I don't want to be in. And it started to feel more like a collaboration. It started to feel more like, hey, I'm managing the finances and I need you to help me with this part. And I'm like, well, I want our finances to be healthy too. So I'm going to help with that part. So I started to figure out ways to actually keep us within budget without bothering Doris. Then, without me really realizing it, I started to actually enjoy that process because I learned about myself that I do not like to be put in a box. I do not like to be told, you have to do this. You have to be a good housewife. You have to be the perfect 1950s homemaker. I did not like being told to do that. And that's what it felt like before. So that's why Doris was in shambles. She's like, why am I being treated this way? Why am I being made to do these things? So when I started to take over and I started to create that budget, and I took myself to the grocery store, and I'm going to tell you something. This says way more about me than you really wanted to know, but I never looked at prices. I never looked at any, I just looked at brand labels. We always buy Philadelphia cream cheese, right? We always buy Hood milk. I never looked at anything else. I would just buy by brand. So I took my new budget to the grocery store and I wrote a list of things that I wanted to buy. And I only bought the things on that list. And as I was going through the list, I started to notice prices. And I saw how much Philadelphia cream cheese was. And I started to ask myself, do they have a competitor? Because do I care that it's Philadelphia? Not really. I'm not married to the brand. I just want some cream cheese for my pasta. Yes, I do pasta and cream cheese. Get over it. So I started to look for next to the Philadelphia little container what the other brands of Philadelphia of cream cheese were. And I saw that even though Philadelphia was like $5, their competitor was like $1.99. I was like, what? What? I can reduce my total bill by so much just by looking at competitor prices, which, by the way, leads me to say my grocery store really needs to get a competitor on light brown sugar. There was no competitor for light brown sugar, and that is appalling. And now, look at me. Look at me. I have an opinion on groceries and prices, and I'm okay with it. So as I started to do that exercise, I started to notice that Doris wasn't depressed anymore. Doris started to play with it. Doris started to enjoy planning new meals. And of course, there was one main rule that had to happen. I had to get my husband to agree. And that was that whenever I cook, everybody in the family needs to eat the same thing. I cannot continue to make 4 different meals every night because I have very picky eaters in my house. So he said, well, we can give it a shot. He thought it was going to be a disaster, but everybody lined up and now they're eating one thing every night. I never thought I would see the day when that would happen. And I am excited about it. And then Doris started to get excited again. Doris started to love her job again because now it became a game. Now it became something that she could look forward to. She could compare prices. She even wants to start clipping coupons and see when the sales are and ask friends who are way more price conscious than we've ever been, what they do, where they buy their stuff, when to use Costco, when to use a regular grocery store, when to buy things online. I've been asking these questions, and Doris is having the time of her life. So I wanted to, before we dive into this conversation with Mia, I wanted to share with you that I'm going through that struggle myself of figuring out how to simplify. But it was really important to me to make sure that I wasn't being forced into a role that I didn't want to play. And once I started to really buy into it, have a real good reason to do things differently, things started to change. My mindset started to change. And now my family's eating one meal per night, and I'm enjoying going to the grocery store again. Now, maybe that's not you. Maybe you don't see yourself enjoying ever going to the grocery store, but maybe you are seeing yourself being pigeonholed into a role, especially when it comes to house stuff. So we're going to have a ton of advice coming in from Mia Moran coming in this interview. But here's my tip for you. Find out what is in it for you. Don't let anybody put you in a box. Find out how you can, by changing some habits, can make something better and start to play that game, the gamification of homemaking, and see what you can do to make it more fun, to make it a challenge, to make it something that you can use your smarts to do. That's how I feel about my dinner budget now. And I can only wish that you discover a little bit of joy in each one of these tasks that you've always dreaded. So on that note, I really hope that was helpful. Make sure to subscribe, to follow, so you don't miss any of other these episodes, because I want to lead into this interview with Mia Moran. Can't wait to introduce you to this wonderful person so we can start to learn from her. Mia Moran is a mom of 3 and productivity coach who has struck her perfect balance between work, family, and her well-being. She supports high-achieving female entrepreneurs who are overwhelmed with work, life, and wellness find their version of balance while making an impact. She is the host of the Plan Simple podcast, best-selling author, and creator of the Flow Planning Method, Flow Planner, and Flow 365 program. I have put her links below, including my interview on her podcast, Plan Simple Podcast. So you can go and check that out. You can also go and buy her book to simplify your entire meal planning. You can find all of those links in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, all you have to do is click right here to go straight to the interview. And if you're listening on the podcast, This interview begins now.